Hi, I'm Heather from Booktubes, and today is my February reading wrap up. In the month of February, I read 25 books. I DNF'd 9 of them, and so I'm going to talk about 16 today. As always, we are going to go in chronological order. I will say, if I look crazy, I'm trying some new makeup products, and I'm not really sure that it's going well. Ignore. First book that I read was For Her Peace, which is Night Brothers number 4 by Dria Andersen. I gave this 5 stars. This is the final book in this series. I love this series. It is black bear and panther and some lion, I think, shifters. And it is low angst, low conflict, alpha but loving. And I don't know, I just really like the couples. They're very into each other. They really are protective of each other, and it's just sweet. And the families are also very protective, at least like the Knight family is, and I just like that dynamic a lot. This one, you do have a content warning because both of them maybe, but definitely she grew up in foster care. She is the friend of the first main character in the series, but also she had a friend that was killed from domestic violence. She has a stalker, and so he's going to be her bodyguard. He runs a security company and is a bodyguard for the Knight family. Yeah, content warnings for domestic violence and stuff kind of referenced rather than being explicitly on page. But even though you had that kind of heavy background happening, the romance was so sweet, and I just really liked Dria Andersen's writing. I particularly really loved this series. I'm kind of sad that it's done, but soon we're going to get more in the vampire series, so I'm excited about that. Next, I read Faded Blades, which is Kinsmen Universe number 3 by Ilona Andrews. I gave this 5 stars. This is the full-length book in the series. So you have the sci-fi world, and they are both very interesting paranormals, where basically they have a magic that manifests like a sword, and they are extremely good fighters and swordsmen. Their spouses both are cheating with each other, and they steal from them. And so these two, who are enemies, who have never talked to each other but are from rival families, have to work together to keep it under wraps and to recover their information that they need for the financial future of their family. Like, everything is riding on this. And I love that, where you kind of have this enemies, but for outside reasons, to reluctant allies, to lovers. I loved the ending. I loved the twist. I loved them. It's just really good Ilona Andrews sci-fi romance. Then I read Winter of the Owl, which is Seasons of the Lukoi, number 1 by Iris Foxglove. I gave this 4 stars. This is a fantasy world where you have dominants and submissives. Everyone is dominant or submissive, and that plays into everyone's not only like societal dynamic, but also obviously sexual dynamic. The first 2 books, including this one in the series, are male, and then the last 2 are poly. This one you have content warning for suicide, murder, abusive ex, verbally abusive ex, and grief. He's a scholar. He gets shipped out to this people. They are survivors, and it is, you know, a very cold, wintry, everybody's gonna die if you leave the house type of land. They're all exiles and have been for hundreds of years in their society, such that if you show up, like, they will take you in. And so he is just no survivor skills at all, a scholar, a language expert, and just, you know, this quiet little guy. He's going to have forced proximity because the person that he's going to live with, obviously, just so he survives the winter, is going to be his mate. Really enjoyed it. Then I read One Dark Window, which is the first in the Shepherd King duet by Rachel Gillig. 5 stars, new favorite. I read this because of Robin, a Paperbacks and Planners. This is a dark fantasy romance. You have a girl who has a monster in her mind, and magic is something that if it happens to you, you're going to be put to death, and there's the sickness that gives you magic. She had it, but she hasn't manifested any magic, and she's been able to kind of keep it under wraps, partially because her father is one of the elite and hid it. And then she's going to run into a highwayman who is also the nephew of the king and the captain of his guard and stuff. And you have these people who are elites themselves, but who are working against the king to try and allow magic to thrive. And you also have this playing deck of cards that give magical abilities that are allowed because it's a different type of magic, and how, you know, the rules are kind of for the have-nots, not so much for the haves, and elitism and all of those things. But you have a really fun romance between these two. It's pretty insta-lovey, but not extremely. And the writing is beautiful, and the magic and the monster in her mind and stuff, all of it is very interesting. Then within 24 hours, I had finished this duet. The next one I read was Two Twisted Crowns, which is the second book, 5 stars. There's another romance in this, even though you are still following the 2 characters from the first book. You get an additional romance in this book and an additional POV, which makes sense for the way that the story goes. This is an incredible sequel. I might have liked it even more than the first one. There's a lot of tree magic and world building, which I really enjoyed. And also there was a particular twist kind of at the beginning of this book on something that happened pretty early in the first book that I really, really liked and thought made that entire element of the storytelling so much better because of the twist that we got with it. I did like it so much. I know. And then there is like this poem type thing and cards and stuff at the beginning of each chapter that is just beautiful, beautiful writing. I just loved this. I loved this. This is a new favorite fantasy romance. This author is not putting out another book until 2025. And I'm so ready to read it. This was just phenomenal. I will absolutely reread this. I would like to try and get my sister to read this. I loved it so much. I ordered merch stickers of it. I think about these all the time. All the time. Then I read These Olive Trees by Ghanameh. I gave this 5 stars. This is a children's picture book about Palestine. It's a great book for children. It focuses on care of the land. I did read it out loud to my children as well. One thing I will say about this that I found interesting is it never says the word Israel at all. It kind of talks about the occupiers and about the Palestinian people being displaced and about their care of the olive trees and how they, you know, love their homeland. But it never says anything about Israel. It just talks about kind of this nameless face that is oppressing them, which I just found interesting. But I would definitely recommend it if you want something to read to your kids. Then I read Wash Day Diaries by Jamila Rowse. I don't know what I wrote. I gave this 5 stars. This is a graphic novel. It is just basically a day in the life, maybe a couple days in the life. Very slice of life. You don't get any resolutions for their storylines or anything like that. I will say there's a content warning for nudity on page, so just be aware of that based on who you're reading it around. Also, depression and an escalating ex. This was really a lovely little slice of life following these 4 friends. It's just as good as everyone says it is. It's short too. Like, it will not take you long to read it all, but it's really beautiful. Then I finished So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijeonna Oluo. I gave this 4 stars. It's a nonfiction, and I felt like I was kind of lied to on the marketing because I picked this up with the idea that it would help me to talk to other white people about race and try and move the needle on that a little bit in my day-to-day personal relationships, and just, you know, give you good pointer tips for how you're approaching these conversations. And that was a little bit what I got, but not really at all. This was much more anti-racism 101 and not so much about talking to other people about race, which is the entire reason why I wanted to read it. I read this a chapter at a time. I did seriously think about DNFing it. I did end up giving it 4 stars because it's not that there was any problem with the book itself. I thought that the writing style was exactly the type of writing style I like for nonfiction, where you have this personal antidote and then you kind of have some application and some discussion and then like just some bullet points on what we talked about in this chapter. But like, as much as I enjoyed the way that she wrote about it, I wasn't looking to read a book about why I shouldn't say the N-word. Like, I just didn't need to read that, and that's not what the book was marketed as. The book was marketed as, so you want to talk to people about this, and I found it to be much more so a 101 primer, and that wasn't what I was looking to pick up. Then I read Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. I gave this 4 stars. This is not currently available because it has been picked up by a traditional publisher. It is a fantasy romance. You have an exiled princess, and she is the queen of her own country now, but she is in hiding, and the commander of another country makes an alliance with her, and they are going to free her dragons who are imprisoned in her home country's castle, and so they have a heist for that. I liked the relationship between her and the commander. This was really TikTok writing in a way where so much of it I felt like was specifically written to be the quote that you would take and put in your TikTok to try and get people to read it. And I am not a anti-TikTok elitist, you know, that's not like a TikTok has ruined reading type of critique, because I think that's silly. But I will say that it felt like, I have this complaint about Sarah J. Maas too, especially with Crescent City. When I read that first book, there were so many things that felt like they were written to become merch, to become marketing, you know, like these generic love conquers all quotes that were just repeated over and over and were big things in the story and were bad and were just there to be the next to whatever end, you know. Fear the Flames wasn't that bad, but I did like really notice it with the writing. And then I had a major issue with this kind of plot whole device thing. So she was the princess, and as soon at her christening, she bonded to these dragons that were gifted to her. And because of that, her father viewed her as a rival and the person who's going to take the throne from him. So he imprisoned her as an infant, and she grew up in a prison cell and was routinely tortured and only learned how to talk so that she could tell them how to break the bond with her dragons, and had just, you know, the most horrific childhood up until she's 10, where she was freed and escaped. But somehow she's normal and well adjusted and not like incredibly weak and malnourished and you know, with extreme PTSD and just an inability to connect with anyone. Like, the level of torture as a child that is described in this book doesn't translate to a well-adjusted person with panic attacks, you know. It's not that she was completely fine, but also, I don't know, like, and also it didn't make any sense that you do that. A princess is already well under your control, and you're much more likely to get her to break the bond with the dragons. I don't know. It didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that she survived to be 10. Like, you have an infant in a prison cell? I don't get it. I don't get it. With like no caretaker? I don't get it. Maybe I missed a little something. Maybe it was my fault. But I am still very annoyed about this. All of that being said, I really, really enjoyed it. I liked reading it. I liked the characters. I liked the relationships. I liked the found family element and the heist and all of these things. I liked a lot of this book, but there were specific things with the writing and this background that just didn't make sense to me. Then I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I gave this 4 stars. I had it on hold from the library. It came in. I wanted to read it right away so that I didn't have to read it months and months later. This is not Omegaverse, okay? All of you all marketing this as Omegaverse, I don't get it. It's not called Nottingverse. It's called Omegaverse, and there is no Omega-ing happening in this story. Now, he is a werewolf and they do not, which if you don't know what that is, if you have the dick and then you have at the base of the dick like donut-like thing that swells up when they're in their fade mate and locks them in to help impregnation. Okay? This is like an actual canine trait in the animal kingdom. Okay, so that's why it's often a werewolf trait. But Omegaverse does not have to be werewolf. But Omegaverse does have to have alphas, betas, and omegas, and this book does not. The only thing that kind of leans into Omegaverse at all is that the werewolf knocks their fated mate, and that's not enough, in my personal opinion, to classify it as Omegaverse at all, because you can have that outside of Omegaverse too. Okay, that's my 2 cents. It's only written in her POV, and she's a little bit dumb. She is a vampire princess for all intents and purposes, but she was already treated as collateral as a child, so she grew up in the human world as the vampire child that they kill if everything goes to hell, right? But her best friend is missing, and her only lead is the name of the werewolf alpha, and so because of that, she agrees to this marriage of alliance, right? And she has to go live with the werewolves. The main thing I didn't like about this is she was dumb. She didn't know what was happening with anybody, anywhere. She wasn't like... I don't like when my main character is the one who knows the least. I've told you this many times. I like when my main character is smarter than everyone else, knows more than everyone else, is the mastermind behind everything. I don't like so much when my main character is very slow on the uptake and is the last one to know. Okay, and that's definitely what happened here. But also, he rejected her as a mate for her freedom without ever telling her that she was his mate, and they have a third act breakup because of that. I don't like that. I don't like that. Don't make decisions for me. Communicate with me. Let me decide for myself. So he never told her that she was his mate, and he pushed her away on purpose and said she wasn't his mate and that he didn't want to be with her, and that was fun while it lasted and all of this to protect her, which didn't work. Okay. I don't like that. That being said, I liked the writing, I liked the characters, and I liked the story. So I had an overall enjoyable experience, which is why it's 4 stars. But I have some critiques. Then I read Sippin and Swooning by Carmen Lee. I gave this 3 stars. This is a lesbian wedding hookup novella. If I had known that it was a wedding hookup, I wouldn't have picked it up in the first place, because I don't care about that setup at all. There's nothing I care less about, I feel like, than a wedding background romance. I did not care about this at all. I don't know if that's because I read it at like Valentine's Day and I was trying to make myself read it and I wasn't really in the mood for a contemporary novella. I don't know if that's just because it wouldn't have changed no matter when I read it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly fine. If you want a wedding novella, pick it up, especially if you like sapphic romance, right? But I didn't care. I didn't care at all. She is the sister of the bride and she hooks up with a bartender. Then I read reread Rock Chick Rescue, which is Rock Chick number 2 by Kristen Ashley. I have a whole rant review, a whole cancellation of the read along, a video, and a live show about this. I gave this 1 star. My general enjoyment of the book was probably about a 3, but because of the racial slurs that are repeated throughout the book, I lowered my rating to a 1 on principle, basically. So the main character really pushes the hero away for no reason. She won't allow help from anyone. She's very do or die, by myself, independent, abandoned by my father issues. And she was like not the most fun to read about because of that. I liked the hero, but he was not great. He was a cop. This is very copaganda, very pro-cop, very all cops are good and hot and helpful and smart and actually trying to do a good job. And that's just not true. Not a favorite. Okay-ish. Really disliked that the slurs kept coming up. Really disliked that the villain was the one saying the slurs, right? And there's content warnings for attempted rape and other stuff from the villain. But she kept repeating the slurs when she was telling the stories, and the main character was white and the love interest was Hispanic. And I just found that weird and odd and questionable. Then I read A Serenade to the Elf Queen by Nira J. Hale. I gave this 3 stars. This is an elf queen and she has this guy in her dreams and it's a vampire and she is having to do stuff because there's like this ruling body of elven elders, and like they decide everything, and she doesn't have as much power as queen as you might think, and her sister was murdered in, oh my god, that is a huge spider. No. Fun story, that spider could jump, but it is now dead, so we move on with our life. Anyways, so she doesn't have a lot of power, and then they are fated mates and they have this instant connection and stuff. Unfortunately, the second half really kind of dive bombed for me. There's a lot of angst in the second half. It leaves off in a very unsatisfactory. They haven't really resoluted everything. It's the first book in a series. I don't know. I didn't like the insta love and this is everything I've ever wanted to. No. No, it's not. And it like still is. And it's like, can you get your act together? So really did not enjoy the second half nearly as much. Then I read a NetGalley arc of When Grumpy Met Sunshine by Charlotte Stain. I gave this 4 stars. This did come out in February. That's why I picked it up then. This is rom-comming. It was funny. It was sweet. It was actually a rom-com. It was so good. So she is a plus-sized ghostwriter and he is a growly, grumpy bear of a soccer player or footballer in England, and he's one of the greats, and he's retired, and he's looking to write his memoir, and he hates everybody, yada yada yada. Very, very grumpy sunshine, as the title would indicate. This was so horny. They were lusting after each other. There were some scenes that took me by surprise and were just fun, and I enjoyed all of that. Unfortunately, at the 90% mark, my enjoyment went like down a cliff. Down a cliff. So they are never together in this book. They never tell each other that they love each other. They don't get together until the epilogue. Also, the epilogue is a year later. They have broken up and not spoken to each other and not had any communication for a year. For no reason other than that 2 adults in their 30s were incapable of letting the other one know that they did in fact have feelings for each other, or wanted to be around each other, or loved each other, or wanted to stay in touch, or anything. Zero communication about it. They both loved each other. They were really into each other, and they didn't speak to each other for a year simply because they could not be bothered to actually tell the other person. I'm so mad about it. So they're not together the whole book. They never are boyfriend girlfriend. They are fake dating. They are never like say that they love each other or anything. It's all very much internal, no communication. They break up for a year, they get together and say that they love each other on the last page of the epilogue, and the book is over. And I'm supposed to feel like these 2 are solid? They're already in their 30s. They should have been mature enough to deal with this in the first place, but they've spent this whole book incapable of communicating, broke up for a year. A year! A year for no reason other than they couldn't say anything. And now suddenly it's all gonna be fixed and we're gonna be fine. No, we're not. No, we're not. So it's still a 4-star because I loved it so much. But I don't really know how much I will be recommending this. And if I do recommend this, I will be absolutely pointing out that this is what to expect, because it's so frustrating. And I didn't know that was gonna happen. And if you are going to have your couple not be together, I don't think you can also have a 3rd act breakup. That's just my personal opinion. If it takes them the entire book to get together, they need to end it together, not end it broken up and they were never really together in the first place. And then also, if you are going to have a 3rd act breakup, I personally think it needs to be resoluted before like the final page of the book. That to me feels very unsatisfying, and I don't like ending the book on a low, on the part that I disliked the most, right? I want to end the book feeling happy about these 2. I don't want to end the book having been happy about these 2 for a sentence after I just read, you know, all these chapters of them not being together, all these pages of them not being together. Like, seriously, if you're going, you gotta pick a struggle. You can't put all the struggles in together. And specifically, the struggles are, you know, them not being together. Pick one. Pick one, and preferably, like, at least the epilogue should already be them happy. They shouldn't be getting together in the epilogue. That is madness. Then I read Wicked Enemy, which is Ruthless Enemies #2 by Marianne Blackwood. I gave this 4 stars. It's a good middle book. It's not good. It's not good. You literally can't read these books back to back. This is dark mages, their enemies. It's a trilogy about the same couple. He is a metal mage and she is not a dark mage. She is someone who shares the magic of everyone else. Yeah, that's all I got for you. You guys know I like the series. It's not good. It's not great even. It is all right. I will say I felt like there was a thing in here where she's captured. They cut her hamstrings and they pull her pants down to do it. And it's very obvious that the author was writing the potential for assault. And the main character even says that they thought that they were going to be raped, right? I just don't like that you are going to use that as like is that what's going to happen? You know, I didn't like that. Lastly, another 4-star. I read Rafe, which is Loose Ends #1 by Rebecca Weatherspoon. I'd already read Zenny and absolutely loved it. This book actually takes place before that. This is the buff male nanny and the doctor, single mom with twin girls. It is so incredibly insta-love and insta-lust. It's kind of mind-boggling, and I like that, but like nothing happens in this book, okay? There is no plot to be seen. This is just vibes. Very lone conflict. It's sweet and it's steamy. She has a jerk of an ex and they have some shared custody stuff, so there's some issues with that. I did really like that since she was Black and her girls are biracial and he was a white guy, I really specifically liked that his stepmom was Black. He already had siblings that were biracial. He had helped raise those siblings. It wasn't like he was suddenly in charge of these girls and he has never been around a Black or brown person before in his life. I really liked that it kind of talked about his background with that. So even though you have this tall, red-haired white guy, he's not insulated by whiteness, and I thought that that was important for it to be relatable and not kind of raise some flags, I guess. So I really liked that also. So that's it. Those are the 16 books that I read in February, and here are some updates on my goals. So at the end of February, I was 4 or 5 books behind my 200 book reading goal for the year. I'm currently 6 books behind when I'm filming this. D and F's would put me ahead of my reading goal, but we're not counting them, so I'm technically behind. Don't know yet if I'm going to change it or not. Not really bothered by it currently. Of the 16 books that I read, 7 were diverse, BIPOC, or queer. Only 5 Black authors, which is not at all where I would like to be for Black History Month at all. I will say 6 of my DNFs were by Black authors, so that was a bit of a fail. I was trying. I was trying to kind of get that ratio up, but it wasn't really working out for me. Such is life. Such is life. Again, a little bit of a failure in my opinion, but not the worst. I haven't had a 5-star read since February 9th. Since February 9th. That is not good. That is not good, folks. I give out 5 stars pretty easily. That is bad. Definitely hit a bit of a slump in that the books just weren't delivering as much as I would have liked for them to deliver. Yes, I am in March and still don't have a 5-star yet. However, the book that I'm reading right now is basically a guaranteed 5-star, so we should hopefully be breaking this streak. Also, huge shout out to Tracy at Bookend to Bookend, my buddy reading bestie. She single-handedly got me to read every single day in February. We kind of were DMing all month long, holding each other accountable just for reading. We were trying to read 29 books. That did not happen, but we did read every day, and that is a win in and of itself, and one that would not have happened without her checking in with me. So I really appreciate her. I love Tracy. You guys should follow her on Instagram. I just really enjoy being bookish friends with her, and the fact that I read past the fact that I read half of these books is fully because of her checking in with me. Otherwise, there would have been a lot of days in the second half of the month that I just didn't read. So shout out to Tracy. We are continuing for March, so get you an accountability partner. Yeah, that's it. A little behind on my goals. However, again, we did get a new all-time favorite, so it's still a win. It's still a win. That's it. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.